Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of 9/11 Freefall. I am the host, Andy Steele, and I was cleaning up earlier in the week, and I found a relic from the early days of the 9/11 Truth Movement. Somebody was handing these out at Ground Zero during a protest. Look at that. It's not really $1. It's a 9/11 George Bush right there, and some other neocons. Looks like Dick Cheney and Karl Rove. And then on the back of it, it says 9/11, God we trust. I guess that's on the common dollar. It says crossing the Rubicon. All sorts of 9/11 references. I am going to frame that. The thing is, I'd like to frame it in the set behind me, but I don't think you guys are going to see it that well. We'll figure that out. But that is a relic from the past, back when we were focusing on this guy right here, because he was still in office. 9/11 had just happened, and we were hearing about the Islamo-fascists that want to destroy our way of life. Look what they just did to the Twin Towers on that day. They didn't really talk about Building 7 much, but look what they had just done on that day, and now we have to do this war of terror. Excuse me, on terror, but I call it the war of terror. Why am I talking about that right now? Well, it seems like the more things change, the more they stay the same. It seems like we're going to be going back to the narrative that we need to fight Islamic terrorists overseas. They moved on to the Russians for a while. Some very scary stuff going on in the last few weeks, as I'm sure this audience knows. We're going to talk a little bit about that too. We got some really great guests today. Kamal Obeid, who is involved in other issues besides 9/11, by the way, and Paul Larudee is back. And we're also going to be joined by our favorite guest here, who's on all of the time. Doesn't need much of an introduction. We're going to be talking about something else really quick before we move on to those more serious things. But Craig McKee has been a journalist in Montreal for over 30 years, covering news and entertainment. He's won 8 provincial and national weekly newspaper awards. Writer for AE 9/11 Truth, Truth and Shadows, Thought Crimes and Misdemeanors. He's got a podcast called Truth and Shadows, and he's a frequent guest on this show. And now, his greatest accomplishment ever, he is the admin at AE 9/11 Truth's new Community Hub Facebook group. Craig, talk a little bit about this group and what are our aims here on social media?
Well, I guess first I would say that the difference between this and the existing AE 9/11 Truth page, which remains a significant social media vehicle, really, it's got an incredible 480,000 plus followers, although one wonders what that means in terms of Facebook anymore, because I can just in terms of my own personal feed, I have 1,000 friends, some of them I even know personally, but I have over 1,000 friends, and I think I rarely see more than about 20 of them on Facebook. So that's kind of the challenge that it's one of the challenges I guess we face with social media these days. But this is, instead of being a page, which is kind of basically the group to post its own stuff, this is a group, which means it's basically more of a discussion forum, and it's just kind of I guess a new opportunity to get people to engage with the evidence, the World Trade Center evidence, and with anything that they want to say about what AE is doing, pro or con. It's not just there for one side of the story. And if people don't necessarily have to stick to things that we've worked on, they can bring other things in there. But it's just, I guess, it's another way to kind of engage with the community and give the give the community, the 9/11 Truth community, and anyone else a chance to engage and talk about the evidence. I'm using the word engage a lot. Talk about the evidence and get connect with other truthers, and so I guess it's just another vehicle to get people interested in what happened on 9/11 at the World Trade Center.
Well, you use the word engage a lot, but I'm not engaged. I am married to this cause.
Okay,
And I
that's a good
am
word
ready to
too.
see it through to the very end, especially since it seems like history is sort of repeating itself in many ways here, getting sentimental, looking at the neocon dollars. And
As
folks,
it
you could,
tends to do. Yes.
yes. And so you folks, you notice probably that we've been doing a lot on social media lately. We're putting out these short videos and the impact is huge. We're reaching thousands and thousands of people. And most importantly, even though we love our supporters and the people who are already in the choir singing with us, we are reaching new people, thousands and thousands of people. And there's a way that they measure this metric. Maybe I should bring the social media guy in sometime to explain that. But they're saying that they were getting people that aren't like on our Facebook page, like as friends or whatever you call it, supporters who don't go to our page at all. And we're reaching all sorts of new people. And we want to be a community because we all need to talk with each other, do share our information. And so that's what the AE 911 Truth Community Hub is all about. You can just type it right into the search box on Facebook, AE 911 Truth Community Hub. And we got a graphic at the top there. We're going to replace that graphic. I came up with that, but we want a better one. So folks, check that out. And if you're not signed up for our emails to get alerts about what we're doing, do so. That's how we bring you great shows like this. So let's get to the meat and potatoes tonight. We're going to bring on our guests. First one is our general manager, Kamal Obeid. He's also a board member for AE 911 Truth. He holds a master's degree in civil engineering from the University of California, Berkeley. Been practicing civil and structural engineer in San Francisco Bay Area since 1980. Licensed structural engineer since 85. He specializes in structural steel building analysis as well as investigating structural failures of steel frame buildings. At one point, he served as a volunteer for FEMA, investigating earthquake failures, and he's a longtime member of the SEANC, that's the Structural Engineers Association of Northern California. And he's going to be joined by Paul Larudee, who is an Iranian-born American political activist. He's a major figure in the pro-Palestinian movement based in San Francisco Bay Area. He's been involved with the International Solidarity Movement and was a founder of the Free Gaza Movement and Free Palestine Movement, along with several other groups and associations. He has had a plethora of experiences, adventures here, trying to make the world a better place. So, guys, thank you for joining us in this, what I consider to be a very important episode of 9/11 Freefall tonight.
Absolutely.
Pleasure to be with you.
So, several weeks ago, there was a roundtable discussion right here on the show. Craig was part of it. We had other people who were a part of it as well. This is regarding Ukraine's use of the ATACMS missiles, appropriately named ATACMS missiles. And this was, we were talking about this red line that Putin had set down. And the red line basically was about, we know if the Ukrainians fire these long-range missiles into Russian territory, they can't be fired unless U.S. hands are involved in the process. So in that way, the West is directly attacking us, and we will consider that an attack from the West. About a day or so after Biden authorized the Ukraine to use these, Biden rewrote his the Russia's nuclear plans. So that's basically, it was as a warning to the Western world. I know that you guys specialize more so in the Middle East, but considering that we've actually had the fear of nuclear war here in the past couple of weeks, we probably, in my opinion, we've been closer to nuclear war, even maybe more so than during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And since we can't have 9/11 justice as the world blows up, folks, so we're talking about this, I want to get your reactions to those developments. We'll start with Paul.
Well, actually, I actually wrote an article last year called Armageddon and the Limits of Evolution. And the theory proposed there is, in fact, that whenever on any planet in the universe, when an intelligent species eventually evolves and creates advanced technology with the ability to destroy themselves and essentially most of the life, at least on the planet, if not all of it, then they do. It's as simple as that. I'll cut to the chase, but the justification is in the article, and it has to do with the nature of evolution itself. And that is that we have never actually had any unquestionable, verified, no evidence of materials that cannot be explained by the natural order of things and the existing technology. We create new materials all the time with our technology. But another civilization would presumably create materials with which we're not familiar. Such things have never, ever been found on this planet. We have left such materials on other objects in the solar system, but we have not found anything from another civilization. So the question that was asked by Enrico Fermi is, where are they? If there are so many of these intelligent civilizations, where are they? Why didn't they come and visit us? Surely they must have known a million years before we were here. They started their evolution way before us, some of them. And anyway, I'm saying too much about it, but that's it. Now, I have the feeling that we're getting closer to that point. And I don't know whether my theory is correct or not. But I think it's worth considering. Is it really the case that the human race will continue forever without using this capability that it's developed? Look back on the past history. Did we ever develop anything that we didn't use? So there you are. We're very much in danger of this. And the people who ignore the danger, such as, I don't know, Tony Blinken, Jake Sullivan, Hillary Clinton, Victoria Nuland, these are the people who really, and so many of these others, they ignore the fact, they keep saying, oh, listen, we're all powerful, we're omnipotent, and nobody's going to defy us. So we can threaten all we want, they won't do anything. That's a mistake. Because if we can think that we're omnipotent, why is it so impossible that other people will think that they're omnipotent? And then you have people going at each other. It's just ignorance to the nth degree. And I'm afraid that we're, as you say, we're getting closer to that now.
I listen to these people. They're absolutely delusional. I watched them interviewed, Blinken and all of that. Absolutely delusional. And what scares me too, even if they're sitting there playing some kind of game of chicken with Russia and they feel that they're in control, the potential for miscommunications, miscalculations, somebody gets some kind of signal or some kind of word from higher up and they misunderstand it. The missiles get fired. And I mean, I'd like to think that there's some kind of safeguards. I'm not an expert on this, like some of these people on other shows, but man, I mean, I've heard so many stories throughout history where we've almost gone to nuclear war, except for one person maybe challenging authority a little bit, or some new information came at the last moment. Just an absolutely terrifying situation. Kamal, your reaction to what Paul just said and everything going on?
Well, I would say, it is definitely arrogance that is taking us down, taking the whole planet down. This arrogance has, I guess, historically has always been there, but it has gone on steroids, I would say, right after 9/11. And right after 9/11, it seems that the neoconservatives became in complete control of our government. From that day on, every single administration has been basically worse than the one before it. And we're heading in that same direction as we go forward. And that's what's so terrifying. I have not been listening. Every once in a while, I tune into the mainstream media to listen to how or maybe I watch clips of the mainstream media that are being discussed by various podcasts, various people that are talking rationally about the situation. And when you look at the stuff that they're saying out there, it's unbelievable how the arrogance, the level of arrogance and stupidity is just unfathomable. And so, I mean, these are the people who control the destiny of the planet. I mean, the U.S. is a superpower, so essentially we're controlling the destiny of the planet that is being run by these very strange, disconnected people. And it is definitely terrifying, I must say. But I mean, that's why we keep saying on this program, and our mission is to basically expose 9/11, because it is so relevant, still relevant today, as it was the day it happened. So I think, I mean, it's like a deck of cards. If that is exposed, and I'm hoping we somehow there's some success, that the deck of cards would hopefully fall apart before the end of the world comes. So
yeah, well, I've been thinking about this, and when I was growing up, now I was born in '79, and then the Berlin Wall fell late '80s and all of that. So I grew up not having to worry about nuclear wars so much. You thought it was just a thing of the past, something your parents worried about. And then it became very real. 9/11, they started sort of bringing, they were using it for propaganda purposes very much after 9/11. But then when our own government got out of control and got us into this situation, it's like, oh my God, this could really happen. And it's whenever you create a new thing, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Great expression, because there is no way to do that. And it's like these weapons were created, and now the paranoia will sit in every country in the world that if they get rid of their nuclear weapons, then somebody else will develop one or have one secretly and trump them during some conflict. So now all of the big countries have to have them. And, if I'm ever not with AE or retire from this at some point, I think I'm going to put some time into some of those groups that are trying to get nuclear weapons eliminated, even though I don't know if that is possible or if anyone would ever give them up. Craig, you were part of that roundtable discussion several weeks ago. Your thoughts on 9/11 justice not existing if the world blows up, and of course, the situation with Russia.
Yeah, a lot of things won't exist if the world blows up. That's for sure. I mean, I think the the way this kind of stuff is allowed to proceed is because people are, information is suppressed, and people are denied, or at least they're steered away from understanding situations, so that they can be kind of conned into supporting things that really are not in anyone's interest. I mean, you mentioned Russia, and I mean, it's funny. I remember I just saw a few days ago a show with Piers Morgan's show, which I catch on YouTube sometimes, and he was talking about he liked the idea that the Americans were encouraging Ukraine to strike inside Russia with long-range missiles, and he was saying that this really shows Putin kind of that we're not going to be treated lightly or whatever. And I just thought, I mean, usually I think he's more or less kind of a moderate, and I can live with a lot of his views on different things, but I just thought that's insane. You're going to play chicken with a nuclear superpower, and kind of like, gee, let's just cross our fingers and hope it doesn't go wrong. It's crazy. And I think when it comes to information, people can make reasonable judgments if they really have all the information. I guess I'm sort of an optimist in that way. For example, how many people know that the Ukrainian government in 2014 had their government overthrown by the United States? How many people know that? I would say very few. And I know this just from telling people that I know about it, and at first they're kind of like, oh, I can't believe that's true. Well, it is true. And so I think people just want to have a position that they're comfortable with. And for a lot of people, Putin being the evil dictator, that's the comfortable thing for them. And so they're prepared to stick with that. And they don't really want to hear stuff that makes that position a little murky. So I think what's going on, I think it's first of all insane that a government that was just that just lost an election fairly decisively is still playing games like this with tempting the escalation of a conflict that could lead to a world war. To me, they shouldn't be doing anything. They should leave that to the next government, and that doesn't mean the next government can be trusted to do the right thing either. Although somehow I think they can't. It's hard to imagine them doing worse, given what the last 4 years have been in terms of pumping hundreds of billions of dollars into this. It doesn't seem like that was going to get any better. So I'm hopeful that things will be a little different this time, but we'll see.
Yeah, and as we said in one of our video memes on Facebook, the same government that told you that World Trade Center 7 wasn't a controlled demolition are the same people that got us here. And I don't consider what's going on now to be any kind of measure of success. So if you're talking to your friends about World Trade Center 7 and they're saying, "Oh, I heard you guys are full of malarkey," those people that you follow, well, just tell them that the same source of that information that gave you that report is the same people that fumbled us into a potential World War III right now. The same reason that we're very scared that maybe our children will not grow up. And I do not think I'm being overly dramatic. All it takes is one miscalculation, one mistake, one person having a bad day, and we can see the end of everything. And it's not just me. I'm not even afraid of dying, but I don't want the whole world to go out with me. I like the idea of the world continuing. So we need to be involved. I guess Scott Ritter is going to be having some kind of rally in December 7th. I don't know a lot of details. I wanted us to send out a bulletin advertising it, doing our little part to help out with that effort. But as soon as I have more details on where to go and where to steer you, we'll send a bulletin out telling you, how to go to that if you can. It's going to be focused on no to nuclear war, no to World War III. I imagine there'll be some great speakers there. So thank you about that. Now, before we started recording today, Kamal, you were talking about resurgence. Well, it seems that ISIS is back, like some kind of bad monster movie or something. And that is why I said in the very beginning, the more things change, the more things stay the same. Talk about how that narrative is shifting now in the Middle East, because it doesn't sound like the only trouble that we're going to be facing and the next administration is just going to be in Eastern Europe.
Well, yeah, definitely the Middle East is a flashpoint that it could be where the nuclear Armageddon starts in the next administration, because it seems like this last administration is more focused on provoking Russia, but the next administration is more focused on provoking Iran, as well as all its allies, including China and Russia. Not necessarily directly, but that's what's going to happen. But the thing is, right now, as far as what's happening, the latest in the Middle East is the resurgence of these terrorist groups, ISIS, who are supported by NATO, supported by the United States, supported by Israel, and they're basically trying to overthrow the Syrian government. And I think the timing of this is interesting because it appears that this neocon NATO project is failing in Lebanon and failing. Israel has been defeated in Lebanon, and basically they're trying to find a way out. But this is the next phase of that essentially is trying to establish the supremacy of the empire by basically overthrowing Syria. So it appears to be a weak link that they're basically trying to penetrate to continue with that destabilization project, where assert more control over the various different resistance groups in the Middle East. And those resistant groups, including Iran, have been a thorn in the side of empire. And so that's what's happening right now. But what's interesting about that, of course, is that you have these Islamic terrorist groups, ISIS, they call them Takfiri groups, because they have no tolerance for any other ideologies other than this extreme fundamentalist warped version of Islam that resembles very much the extreme warped version of Judaism, of Zionism. And so they get along very well. So they're so that's why Israel supports that. And in fact, I mean, this is when you go back and look at what happened 10 years ago with the attacks that were trying to perpetrate against the Syrian government back then. Those groups were ISIS fighters. When they get injured, they were treated in Israel. So I mean, it's funny because when you hear the government of Israel likening the Palestinian resistance to ISIS, whereas what is missing there is that ISIS is actually their ally. So anyway, so I mean, the fear right now is that this is going to continue to provoke a potential major conflagration in that area, and which would involve Iran again, and basically escalate. And I'm afraid that the likelihood of escalation is going to be increased with the Trump administration coming in. So
I just received about a couple hours ago a video of that was taken by one of the Takfiri so-called rebels, and he scanned all the Syrian army prisoners that they had under control at that time, who were seated on the ground. And when he finally scanned around to the end of them, he directed the camera on one of his colleagues who had a gun in his hand. And then his colleague opened fire and killed all of them.
Oh my God.
That's the video that I got. I would send it to you, except that you can't post it, but this reminds me of nothing quite so much as exactly what Israel is doing in Gaza. This is actually, in a sense, the policy, the way that the United States operates. It's the way the CIA and the intelligence services and the Black Ops and so forth. It is escalation dominance. Do as much destruction as possible so that you instill compliance through fear and intimidation.
Folks, what happens in other parts of the world comes home to us, even if it's not the story that we were told. What was going on in other parts of the world is what resulted in our buildings, our towers, 1, 2, and 7, being brought down by controlled demolition on that day, and the ambitions of powerful people who are never satisfied with having enough empire, enough money. They always want to grow and get bigger like a cancer. These are the things that we need to keep our eye on, because if another building comes down like that, and I mean, it would be a great opportunity to jump right on it, but at the same time, it'd be a horrible tragedy here in this world. And we got to keep on speaking out about these things, and we will do that. We focus on the science of the building demolitions, but as individuals, we talk about these things, whether it be in the community hub or here on 9/11 Free Fall, and our right to do that, to speak out about these things, needs to be protected. And one of the main things I wanted to bring Kamal and Paul on here to talk about, and Craig, of course, is this development. Most recently, we had an article come out at AE 9/11 Truth earlier this week. Bill could kill groups like AE 9/11 Truth for alleged support of terrorist groups. We are talking about HR 9495. Kamal, tell us more about that bill.
Okay, well, it's being touted as a nonprofit killer. legislation. So this stems from the government or the neocons, again, being intolerant of free speech, being intolerant of protests. And it really started with the protest against the genocide in Gaza. So I guess the powers to be are intolerant to have anybody standing up for the truth. Anybody standing up for free speech is not accepted, not tolerated anymore. So it's that's where this thing stems from, and there are many people, including news outlets and other organizations that depend or that are the last bastions of free speech, the last bastions of telling the truth. And what these elements, the dark, deep state of the government is trying to do is to shut us down, shut down anything that has to do with the truth, anything with free speech. I mean, just look at it. It's very interesting. I mean, to defund, to try to basically destroy the ability of nonprofit or 501c3s to basically be able to raise money and raise money tax-free. So this legislation, if passed by the Senate, which is where it's going next, would allow the Treasury Secretary or the Treasury Department to basically arbitrarily decide without proof to accuse any nonprofit of basically supporting terrorism and basically yank the nonprofit status. And so then it puts the onus, the burden on the nonprofit to basically try to get it reinstated, which would be, I mean, would basically exhaust the resources of these various groups to be able to defend themselves and do their function. So the last remnants of free speech we have, other than the alternative media and all these various different groups that speak the truth, could be construed as supporting terrorism, because they don't go along with the accepted narrative that the deep state or the neocons want. They want to keep people in a state of ignorance and just let things happen, let them stay in the driver's seat and destroy this planet. I mean, I have no idea what their intentions are, how they're profiting from this. I have no idea, other than the military-industrial complex making oodles of money. But I mean, it's taking us all down. Everybody's taken down. So I just don't get it. But anyway, so that's how I see it.
Well, I just want to clarify, because from the ACLU, and I lifted this from their page. I'm going to read it verbatim, talking about HR 9495. Says the bill would give the executive branch the authority to effectively dismantle any nonprofit organization deemed to have provided material support to terrorist groups without due process. And an authoritarian-leaning executive branch could take advantage of the vague definition of material support to target nonprofits based on their political advocacy and other activities protected by the First Amendment. Now, I can hear people in the audience saying, well, Donald Trump's not going to do that. I voted for Trump. I got up early in the morning to make America great again. I have faith in him. And I'm not speaking out against Trump or for him or whatever. We're being politically neutral here. But what if he's not the president someday, which he's not going to be in 4 years? What if the next president has this authority and you don't like them and they don't like what you're saying? That's why you got to speak out. Even if you like the president, you don't like the president, anything that threatens the First Amendment of the U.S. Bill of Rights or any natural right that we have as citizens, we have to speak out about. And we have particular reason, even though we're peaceful here, we're not violent of any kind. We're not doing anything wrong. However, we got some reason to be concerned, and I'll be showing you guys that later on in the program. Go ahead.
Well, you don't have to go that far in saying if the president is there or not there. Trump has already made that statement that he wants to basically stifle or basically kind of prosecute. He wanted to prosecute all these groups that basically he calls them leftist crazies, whatever he wants to call them. But I would include the Palestine solidarity groups. That is basically, he's been paid. I mean, that's the whole thing with Trump. His donors, many of his donors are huge neocon people, and basically, that's what they want. And he is wanting to basically give them what they need. I mean, what they ask for. Money talks. That's the problem with our government is money. The widow of Adelson gave him $100 million, his biggest donor in his campaign, and these are the things. Speaking up against Zionism, speaking up against the destruction of the planet, is not tolerated. So and he's going to oblige them. He's basically going to oblige them. So I mean, I think it's not going to get better that he's necessarily coming into office. I'm hoping that some of the like Tulsi Gabbard or maybe others who have a little more level-headed attitude would actually prevail in this case. But it doesn't look like it.
I don't think it matters who's in office. The point is that the legislation and many other pieces of legislation that have been passed previously, as well as the Supreme Court decisions, such as Citizen United, the whole function of all of this body of law making and government by fiat has been growing for decades now. And the whole point is to decide what people hear, think, eat, breathe, and for the citizenry of the country to become basically the cattle which are milked and slaughtered and fleeced for the benefit of the shepherds who decide to use them the way they want. That's basically what's happening now in this country. It's going in that direction, and there's very little to stop them now, unfortunately.
Well, and it's also, too, if this gets passed, even if it's not used immediately, let's say they sit on it for a while, sit on this power, all it takes is for another building to come down, for everyone to get hysterical and get behind stepping on people's rights. And man, will that be a sight to see all these nonprofits shut down. And I'm going to have a clip to play to show people why we're so concerned. But Craig, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think there's a war on free speech that's going on, and it's not just starting on January 20th next year. It'll continue, I'm quite sure. But as I agree with Paul that it's largely the same regardless of who's in the White House. But I certainly would hesitate to be alarmist about it getting a lot worse, because I'm not sure how much worse it can get than what we have right now, honestly. Let's not forget the attempt by the Biden administration to create the Misinformation Governance Board, which essentially would be like a ministry of truth, whereby the government would decide what's true. And then if you say something different, then that's misinformation. That's been happening for a number of years now. And it's, we've seen the censorship. And I really think the whole kind of woke movement, which may seem like it's a little bit off topic for this discussion, but I think the function that it seems to be playing is that it is getting people to be comfortable with the idea that certain speech is dangerous and certain ideas are dangerous, and it's justified to suppress those ideas or to regulate them. I mean, look how many it now seems to be, I always was kind of, a left person who, believed in free speech and civil liberties and this sort of thing, and still do, obviously, and peace. But it seems now that the liberals are the ones that are calling for censorship and calling for regulation of social media, and it seems like there's, an assault on free speech coming from all kinds of different directions now, and we're being convinced, or there's an attempt being made to convince us of this idea that words are dangerous and ideas are dangerous and they need to be controlled. So I think I'm not particularly worried that this is going to be worse under the Trump administration, but I certainly think there's a danger it won't be any better, or it'll just continue, because really it doesn't seem to matter who's in the White House. It just seems like that revolves, and the deep state path just seems to not vary from year to year and decade to decade.
Right. And, back in these times right here, when I was getting handed this dollar, people who spoke out against the government or spoke out against government narratives, it was a very scary time because, man, the government was seeing terrorists under every pillow cushion, every mattress, and they were trying their best to try to shut down discussion of things like our topic. I don't know if the infrastructure was in place so much to do that at that point. They've managed to do that through the algorithms and internet censorship, more so, where we can't get our message out. But back in 2007, and this is actually the very first time I ever heard of AE 9/11 Truth. There were other 9/11 Truth groups and people speaking out back then, but the first time I ever heard of AE 9/11 Truth is when it was put on a slideshow in a presentation to a Homeland Security subcommittee, claiming that this group is somehow involved in violence and radicalization and all of that. At the time, the founder, Richard Gage, made a video where he discusses the situation. And of course, AE 9/11 Truth demanded a retraction. But I'm going to go ahead and play this video for our audience. We're going to take a time travel trip back to 2007. This is about 2.5 minutes long.
So you have an all-day or part-day presentation at the Subcommittee on Homeland Security hosted by Jane Harman, congressperson, representative. It's entitled Using the Web as a Weapon, the Internet as a Tool for Violent Radicalization and Homegrown Terrorism. So we have Mark Weitzman from the Simon Wiesenthal Center for Tolerance in a 5-minute presentation with his PowerPoint showing all of these jihadi websites with militant websites showing how to do violent stuff. And sandwiched in between all of those is Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, a peaceful little website put together by this handful of 220 architects and engineers, professional credentialed, and by implication, we are being branded as terrorists. Whether he said we're terrorists or not, there's no other reason for him to have included us on his website, on his PowerPoint presentation. We are asking for an apology for having our website on this presentation, and we are clearly asking for a retraction, and that needs to be posted on C-SPAN, on your website prominently, to every member of Congress who was at that presentation and every member who has seen it since. There's absolutely no reason for AE911truth.org to have been in this presentation of yours entitled Using the Web as a Weapon, the Internet as a Tool for Violent Radicalization and Homegrown Terrorism, especially with the subtitle over our website, Incubator of 9/11 Conspiracies and Disinformation, and particularly at the exact moment when you stated, soon, 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 the attack on Manhattan. That is libelous defamatory, and slanderous, and we demand a retraction.
So yeah, because they lied about the content on the website as well. Now, anybody who has been following us for a very long time knows that we're pretty peaceful here. We do shows, we do presentations, we put out material, we use our First Amendment and our First Amendment only. We find new creative ways to give the evidence to new audiences. And that is the essence of what we were doing. It was the essence of what Richard was doing back in 2007. But when we're raising the alarm about this, folks, it's not because we're just looking for content or because we're just being paranoid or jumping to conclusions. There's precedent for this in AE's history, where this very simple, which we didn't even have a lot of architects and engineers at that time, but this very simple group that is just talking about evidence was listed in this PowerPoint before this Homeland Security Committee, and being classified as a violent radical group. And then they're lying about the content of the website. So yes, we are a little sensitive about this bill coming up where they say they can completely shut down your nonprofit status. And now that doesn't mean that any of us individually would be finished with our mission, but it would definitely make things a lot more difficult for us and in getting our message out, because working together, these people that you see here and some people that you don't, is how we are so successful, right? And we've seen all of the efforts to try to stifle us. Again, internet censorship. We had Zach Voorhees at our 9/11 anniversary event go into it for a full hour on how they are censoring us, how they're censoring other groups that talk about issues that the mainstream doesn't like, how the algorithm can just make you completely disappear. We have seen it all over the place. They are throwing everything they can at us. There is precedent in our history, and so we are going to try to fight this bill before it is given birth and becomes a monster. Kamal, you're the general manager here. Your thoughts after seeing that clip?
Well, I mean, I've heard of this. I've actually watched that hearing back then, many years ago, and it's shocking. I mean, it's shocking. And why is it shocking? We've never accused anyone. We've only asked for an independent investigation. Why are these people so riled up about this? Why is the Simon Wiesenthal Center so riled up about this? We've never accused anyone. We've never pointed fingers at anybody. We've just asked for an independent investigation. So I'd leave it with that. I mean, the thing is that we nonprofits right now and all people of conscience must fight this. We have to fight this. Otherwise, free speech is finished in this country. Our First Amendment is gone. So it's fundamentally, I mean, it's just about this is the most critical time for us to rise up and basically deal with the situation.
Paul, you're not at AE 9/11 Truth. However, you just watched that clip. Does it shock you at all that a group of science nerds studying the destruction of the 3 World Trade Center towers on September 11th and really doing nothing other than that and talking about it would be put into a presentation like this before the Homeland Security Committee? And do you think we could see a revisiting of an incident like that if this bill gets passed?
Well, I wish I could say that it surprises me and shocks me, but so there have been so many shocks of this kind that it doesn't anymore. I rather expect it to happen, and I expect it to get worse. Obviously, we have to keep fighting it. If we don't fight it, we're leaving the field open for them to take it whenever they want. And we have fought that the nonprofit that has to, the Association for Investment in Popular Action Committees has been in similar situations and probably will be in a very similar situation again before long. But we have been vilified in the media, and there are members of the government that have vilified us. we sponsored Dennis Kucinich to go and speak in London at a meeting on Palestine, and he ultimately returned the fee and the costs to us, the entire amount. He returned it to us because people pursued him, journalists pursued him on the basis that he was funded by us. This is so yes, a lot more of us will be persecuted, the same as Holy Land Trust and Haramain Foundation and so many others that have already been prosecuted on this basis. So we have to learn from the groups like the underground under from 67 to 74 in the Greek when the Greek dictatorship was in power, how to do things and how to sabotage the system the way that they did. A dear friend of mine who was one of the leaders of that movement just died recently, but he was a hero, and so were many others, and we need a lot of heroes in order to take this on.
Well, I've found because I've had some conflicts over my career, and I've found that one person can make a difference just by refusing to go along. And I think if a lot of people do that, obviously that makes a bigger difference. Just simple mathematics. So you can refuse, stand up for principle, and you don't even have to be sneaky about it. You just say, no, I'm not going along with this. Do whatever you need to, but I'm not going along. Craig, I don't know how many times you've watched that clip. Go ahead. But I was going to ask you to respond to the clip that we watched.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it years and years ago, but it's interesting to see it again. I remembered that whole incident. It strikes me that that we're objecting to being included, or Richard was at the time objecting that we were included in that. I bet you there were other groups that were included that didn't belong there either. I don't know who all the groups were and what the allegations were that were made then, or if there even were allegations that were specific. But I'm sure that we weren't the only group that was being unjustly called terrorists. In fact, the 9/11 Truth Movement, there have been various government statements and things in publications that I can't recall specifics now, but over the years that have labeled people who question 9/11 as being, an example of domestic terrorism. And it really, what it comes down to is, if you don't go along with the establishment narrative, then you're a terrorist. You're terrorizing that narrative, really. And so it really is a bigger issue than any one group. And it really is. It's basically anything that is a threat to the establishment is going to be painted as dangerous. And certainly the people, there's an agenda, and, we see it in the Middle East, we see it in Eastern Europe, and we see it all over the world. There's an agenda. And if you speak out against that agenda, then, they're going to want to shoot the messenger. And that's what, that's where free speech stands today. It's a battle to save it.
That's right. We're the messenger. We're just delivering the evidence, And yeah. I mean, if we weren't, somebody else would be. Yeah. And, the thing is like, I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to do any violence. Good God. I mean, especially now I'm getting older here. I don't want any trouble like that in my life. I try to lead a peaceful life every single day, but I won't shut up. And I'll keep talking about this for as long as I can, because the case has been already made. You've already exposed it. Building 7, controlled demolition. The evidence is there. UAF study has proven it, essentially. Right? But we got to keep on beating the drum on this because they want everyone to forget. But you keep on talking about this, you can affect future events, current events, by reminding people they lied to you back then. They're probably lying to you about now about something. That's why AE 9/11 Truth is so important, and that's why they throw everything they can at us. So this is just another battle in the big adventure here of 9/11 Truth. Kamal and Paul, I know you guys are taking are working with some groups, taking some action here on HR 9495. I guess, we'll start with Kamal. Tell us what are some of the plans that are in the works to try to fight this?
Well, we can't really. We're still in the early process of discussing this with legal help, and Paul can decide how much he wants to talk about this now. But we want. I mean, the whole concept is to basically pool our resources to fight this. And it's
Yes.
But what I can say is that for our supporters, for AE 9/11 supporters, this is a crucial moment. We must do this. It's probably the most important thing on our agenda right now. I mean, it's amazing how we've gotten diverted into protect. I mean, right now we're basically fending off an attack on the organization as opposed to exposing the truth. But that's all we have to do, and we have to basically raise the resources and pool our resources to be able to fight it. So it's more important than ever for our supporters to join in, whether with donations or whether with power, manpower, to basically help us. Now is the time.
Absolutely, folks. It's always the time. It's always the time because, man, this is a 24/7 battle that has been waged. And yeah, they will try everything. The thing is, they always sort of fail in the end. They succeed a little bit, but they also kind of fail, as proven by the fact that we are still here. And we're not going to get into it now, but we've had other attacks on the organization in the past. We've survived it. I think that ticks them off to see us still here on the screen, still existing, still thriving. And as long as our supporters stand with us, because that is the lifeblood of AE 9/11 Truth. As long as you guys stay with us, we will continue to be here talking about 9/11, talking about the issues that matter, and being a voice for the voiceless, especially for those who died on that terrible day. Guys, thank you so much for coming on today, talking about this. You got some more knowledge on this bill than I do. We're going to follow this and keep our supporters updated on what's going on with it. But thank you for coming on 9/11 Freefall today.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Pleasure.
Hit that notification bell and slam the like button and subscribe. Thanks.